Welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World, coming to you as a double dose of Prime Sports World. I'm of course your host, David On Point. Helping right there is my co-host, Mr. TJ Hopkins. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. As if you like good content, we go live basically every single day, bringing you guys the most up-to-date content. Today, we're going to be talking about the Denver Broncos and their offseason previews, as this is one of the teams that's made one of the big splashes so far in the offseason. We talk about their offseason, what they should do with the draft, how they should approach free agency, and obviously what they just did with the head coaching situation. TJ, welcome into the show, man. I've also shared the streaming platform for all of our streaming websites, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Welcome to the show, TJ. How are you, buddy?
Really? We're going to do the pleasantry thing again?
We are.
Let's roll.
We don't know. We don't know who's watching, you know. But yeah, obviously the big line here about the Denver Broncos offseason is they traded for Sean Payton basically like a week ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
Was it about 5 days ago? But yeah, they traded for him. They make the deal with the New Orleans Saints. They give up a first-round pick, the 29th overall pick, and I think a second-round pick, and they got back Sean Payton and a third. That trade is official. He has officially signed the contract. I think he had his press conference today, actually.
Yeah, I think so. He kind of took a shot at Nathaniel Hackett and basically saying like how the crowd won't have to count down the play clock to get the offense to hike the ball. I'm like, bro, just come on, bro, just.
But yeah, so it's a 2023 first-round pick, a 2024 second-round pick in exchange for a Sean Payton, obviously, and the Saints 2024 third-round pick. The Denver Broncos now for the next 3 seasons do not have a first or second-round pick in the next 2 seasons. They've essentially traded away 3 firsts, 3 seconds, 3 players, and for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. So they've kind of gone all in here. This is all either going to work or it's going to be a complete disaster. Yeah. He replaces Nathaniel Hackett, who was fired after 15 seasons, winning just 4 of those games. Really looked way over his head as the head coach of this Denver Broncos team. He's the 20th head coach in Denver Broncos history, and it's kind of the 5th guy that now John Elway is kicking the tires on. We'll see what happens with how long his lease is going to be. But I think the big thing we got to talk about here is Sean Payton and Russell Wilson's fit in Denver. Do you think Sean Payton is going to be the guy to fix Russell Wilson?
Yeah, he better be. Like you're all tied together now. Like there is no contingency plan there. This is it. This is the guy. Like this is who you're putting all your hopes on. Like he has to. Like I ain't no. Do I think he can be? He has to be.
Yep. The rumor is 5 years, $18 million, not for the full 5 years, every season.
Yeah, he has to.
That's that Walmart money right there, for sure.
He has to be the guy, and this. I don't. Like with Denver, like we saw the issues that they had. Like the offense looked terrible. The offense was terrible. Like the whole team was terrible. And the defense.
The defense played really well.
The defense, but it's the thing. Like the defense held on for as long as they could, till they couldn't no more. And it's just like we saw it all the time with Bears teams in the past. Defense great, offense playing catch up, and eventually those guys get tired because you're constantly putting them out there, constantly putting them in bad situations. And yeah, that's what happened, right? Like obviously, like when you traded for Russell Wilson, you didn't think you'd be dead last. Well, not dead last offense, but pretty close to the bottom offensively, right? Like
you never imagined that it would take until the last game of the season for Russell Wilson to throw more touchdowns than he has bathrooms in his house.
Like it's
12.
And this is a team like we talked about for years. Right, they're a quarterback away. Like everybody was out on Drew Lock. Drew Lock wasn't a guy. All this other stuff, and you did all of that to you get rid of Drew Lock to get Russell Wilson, and then he has a season worse than what Drew Lock ever had. And
Andy had a season worse than Geno Smith.
Geno Smith had and that's the kicker, right? Like the guy. Yeah, that's the kicker. Like the guy that took over for you in Seattle had made the Pro Bowl.
I mean, give him, I mean, say whatever the Pro Bowl is at this point.
Right, whatever it's worth, right? Like
Yeah.
at this point, it's just a name tag, right? Like that's
Well, I think for players making their first Pro Bowl, I think it's still a big deal. But I think after that, I
it's
think it loses. But
yeah.
anyways, before we get way off track here, I don't want to talk about the
But
Pro Bowl.
I mean,
I wasted enough time watching the Pro Bowl this weekend.
I mean, like they had injury. Like I think they lost Tim Patrick, who's a
Correct.
who's a very nice slot guy.
Very underrated wide receiver for sure.
Before like they lost Tim Patrick before the season even started, right?
Yeah, tore his ACL in training camp or in off-season OTAs.
So it's like so you lose him, and then you got guys like Jerry Judy, literally pissed off at everything. He threw like he had that one game where he just lost it, like he threw his helmet because he just wasn't getting the ball, and I'm like, I get it, like, hey man, like I get it, like it's just a frustration.
Well, I mean, he went on to have his best game of the season after that. I think he had a hat trick of touchdowns during that game, where he basically blew up on the sidelines, threw his helmet. He had 3 touchdowns during that game.
Right, Melvin Gordon had fumble issues, and we saw that game against.
Well, it was relatively unproductive, but I think the bigger issue when we're talking about the Denver Broncos, I actually think the skill positions they're okay. I mean, Alberto is a solid tight end. I like, I think Javonte Williams is a good running back when he's not. When he's
they
healthy.
Lost him, right? They lost him too.
Pretty early, week 2 or 3. That's why they were forced to rely on a guy like Latavius Murray, who wasn't even on the roster when this season started. But the offensive line has got to be what we're talking about here when it comes to Denver Broncos. This is an offensive line that just has holes everywhere, and they don't necessarily have. You see the cap space on there, $9.2 million in cap space. They don't really necessarily have a guy they can go out and sign that can solve that issue.
No, so
and they have no draft capital either to solve that problem as well.
And you kind of said that, so like I think that's the next plan, right? You have no draft capital. You got pieces on that defense and offense, really, that you can really sell off. I mean, I don't
necessarily think they want to sell off. I don't know.
No, it's well. How many times have we seen a team get into a situation where they don't want to sell, but they have to sell? They don't want to, but they have to. Right? You cannot go into the future with no firsts, no seconds, and no thirds. That cannot happen. And especially a team like the Denver Broncos. Like, how do you think they got all those weapons? How do you think you got Cortland Sutton, first round? Jerry Judy, first round. Javonte Williams, second round. You cannot Albert O, third round.
Cortland Sutton was actually a second round pick, but
nonetheless, Jerry Judy first round pick, Cortland Sutton second round pick, Javonte Williams second round pick.
I mean, they could cut Graham Glasgow and save a bunch of money, but he's a starting center. I don't know if you necessarily want to do that.
I think you got Albert O in the third round, so it's like you have you cannot go into the future with just day 3 picks. But,
I mean, the other thing is, when you look at their roster, I don't know that there's necessarily a lot of players that other teams would want and would be willing to give up legitimate draft capital to help. I mean, Justin Simmons is a guy I'm sure teams, but he's a pivotal piece to this roster. I don't know necessarily you want to trade him away just to get picks.
Nobody, nothing at this stage. Patrick
Surtain the second's got to be close to untouchable.
Oh yeah, he's on. Oh yeah, I'm not even calling him, but like Justin Simmons is a guy that they've shown like the unwillingness to negotiate in the past like they tagged him, right?
I mean, but the season after that, they made him the highest paid safety in the National Football League.
But at the same time, it's you have to have those conversations. Nobody's off. Nobody. I mean, like when I say nobody, I mean obviously the obvious. Like you're not trading. What's his name? You're not trading Surtain. You're not trading You probably maybe not trading one of
I
those
think
two receivers.
I think KJ Hamler is going to be a cap casualty. I think you for sure can looking to move KJ Hamler. He's a second round pick, hasn't been really good for you as a second round pick. I think the emergence of an Eric Sauburns and the other tight end has made an Albert O a little bit expendable.
I doubt they move on from him. Like they not moving on from Alvaro. Like
I
I
mean, but they
doubt
have
that.
two other tight ends. I think they like the rookie that they had last season, who kind of showed some flashes. And I think Eric Sauber had a pretty good season too. I mean, if they're looking to
For what it's
build up
worth.
build up other parts of their roster, I mean, they have to go to where it's like a tight end. A tight end position and wide receiver is kind of a strength of theirs. So if they could trade some of these other tight ends, even if they keep Alberto and trade. And that guy's name is totally escaped me. I'm gonna get it here in a second. But in order to build up some of their other assets and get some draft capital, because 6 first-round picks is not going to be enough to solve all the problems. And if you're putting a guy like a Sean Payton behind the 8 ball before he even gets the job,
Well, he's behind the
and
eight ball.
you're paying him $18 million.
Well, he behind the 8 ball already. Like he's pretty much playing catch up to two teams, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and one of those teams is in the Super Bowl. Like we like this, and that's pretty much why that's also why you hired him, right? Big Red,
Greg Dulcich.
Big Red has had the AFC West in the stranglehold pretty much since he got there, right?
Big Red.
Big Red, Big Red is he's had the AFC like everybody know like that division starts and ends with the Kansas City Chiefs. They are
That's
the team
true.
to beat. The
And it looks
Chargers
like the Raiders are probably going to be going into a slight rebuild here, or
just
a complete rebuild, probably.
and that plan changes if they are able to somehow get Aaron Rodgers. That's the new rumor that's picking up steam. Aaron Rodgers to Las Vegas. All right, like if that happens, maybe you not talking about rebuild. Like
I mean,
because
maybe. I mean,
no seriously, like if the Raiders get Aaron Rodgers, like they are back in the swing of things, like dead ass. We'll get to the Raiders in a minute, or in another episode. I mean, but like if you're the Broncos, that's why you hire Sean Payton. You got two questions. Like you ask him, can you fix Russell Wilson? Can you compete with the Kansas City Chiefs? That's it. Like let's not act like Sean Payton is just some run of the mill recycled coach. This is his second coaching job. No, yeah.
yep. Well, no, I think he had the head coaching
I'm
job.
talking about like just as a head coach. Like this is like
Yeah, so he was a quarterback coach in New York.
I
He
don't
went
count
to the
that.
Super Bowl.
I don't count that. I
I
ain't talking
was
about
telling
that.
you his
I ain't
resume.
talking
He was a
about that. I'm talking
quarterbacks
about
coach when the Kerry Collins led Giants with the Super Bowl in 2001. They got beat by the Ravens, I think. And then he was the quarterback coach in the same position for the Cowboys under Bill Parcells. And then he gets the job for the New Orleans Saints. Takes them basically has an insane run with them. Goes to the Super Bowl. They have a bunch of years where they basically don't play defense at all. Where they still make the playoffs every season. They get the Minnesota Miracle happens to one season the playoffs. He gets robbed of another Super Bowl appearance by one of the worst calls in the history of the playoffs.
Yep.
That Bradley Roby Colbin.
Nicole.
And
Yeah,
then,
Nicole Robinson. Yeah.
and then he gets kind of the best couple seasons out of Jameis Winston, especially the season before he tore his ACL. I mean, he was really playing well, and you can make the argument if he doesn't get hurt that season, the Saints make the playoffs, and maybe we're not even talking about Sean Payton even being available.
Maybe, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. And speaking of fixing dudes, like he took a broken down Drew Brees
Yeah.
and turned Drew Brees into a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Right? We know the story. Like he goes to Drew Brees is all set to go to the Dolphins with Nick Saban.
Yep. And then he doesn't pass the physical.
They
decide to move on from him.
They fail his physical and subsequently fires Nick Saban out of the NFL. Nick Saban goes back to Alabama, and Drew Brees goes to New Orleans. And as we say, the rest is history. Right? Like think about that. Like think about how the landscape would have been had the Miami Dolphins doctors would have been like, "Hey, yeah, he's fine.
Yeah.
He can play."
Yeah,
Nick Saban probably is still in the NFL, right?
Yep.
Like because Go ahead.
So there are some of the notable free agents. You got Billy Turner, Kareem Jackson, Calvin Anderson. Nobody you kind of really shed a tear about. If maybe Kareem Jackson, a little bit of good safety out of there.
Maybe Billy Turner.
I mean, maybe. I mean,
Maybe.
He's a good swing tackle. I don't think he's anything special. $9.2 million in cap space. Let's talk about how they should approach free agency and the draft. Now that we kind of talked about the Sean Payton situation there a little bit.
You see that number right there? That 9.2. Yeah, they got some work to do, man. It's what you call it. Like we saw Ryan Poles had to build a team with like $3 million more than that. Like so, it's a lot of 1 year deals. It's gonna be a lot of 1 year deals for the foreseeable future for those guys in Denver. Like if you're a free agent looking for a big payday.
Well, I think that what they're hoping is they can attract cheaper free agents to take a little bit less money to have an opportunity to play with a Russell Wilson, to be coached by a Sean Payton. I mean, I don't think it's been announced who the defensive coordinator is going to be. I think it may be Vic Fangio.
He's with the Dolphins.
Okay, well, because the guy they had last season, it was Ezero. He's now in Carolina. Yeah, I think he's in Carolina now. So they're going to have to find a new offensive coordinator. On a defense is already pretty good, but like if you can get a guy to be like, hey, we're going to take a run toward the Super Bowl. We have Sean Payton, we have Russell Wilson. Both of those guys have won Super Bowls and been to Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
Come on board. Let's make this happen. Let's dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think there's going to be a lot of players that are like, you know what? Let's ride. It's terrible as that sounds now after what happened last season, but let's ride with the Denver Broncos. Let's find out what we can do. Let's see if we can dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. Because until the Kansas City Chiefs get beat, they're going to have one team in the AFC.
And we talk about fan bases that, you know, like impatient fan bases. The Broncos have every right to be an impatient fan base.
Yeah.
Like
they've been super patient. Like while John Elway was basically filtering through quarterbacks every single season, like trying to.
And I'm not even talking about. Well, yeah, that plays a big role into it, right? Like you go, because again, John Elway, you don't get credit for Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning literally didn't have to go to Denver. Like Peyton Manning went to Denver because he wanted to. If Peyton Manning would have decided to retire after that fourth neck surgery, Peyton Manning would still be where he's at. Right? He'd still be in the Hall of Fame. He'd probably still have the ESPN deal, yada woo woo. But
he probably wouldn't have that untouchable record that he currently has. Even with an extra game, nobody got even close to his passing yards or his touchdown record. So
whatever. That's whatever. But Brock Osweiler, Tim Tebow, Paxton Lynch, who Paxton Lynch, who couldn't even get on the field. By the way,
dude was a first round pick. That was they traded up to get him too.
Trevor Siemian,
Drew Lock, another guy. I mean, I don't know if you mentioned him earlier.
No, I didn't. But Drew Lock. So it's like your luck in the quarterback market hasn't been a good one, and now Russell Wilson looks like. I know it's still early; it's only been one season, but he looks like, quote unquote, another bad investment.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that had a lot. I think it had a lot to do with coaching last season. I just think that Luke at
Nathaniel Hackett. Sorry. Well, no, we already know. We already know. You already know my philosophy, my theory on that, right? Like they hired Nathaniel Hackett in hopes, of getting Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay. And they were unsuccessful in doing that, and then they made the move that they made for Russell Wilson. That just goes to show you that every quarterback ain't meant for every system, right? Like there's no telling what Aaron Rodgers would have did with that system in Denver, right? I don't think we have the play clock issues that they had this past season.
No, I think there's also more trust level there.
Absolutely.
And I kind of talked about this when Nathaniel Hackett first got hired. That I said that like because of the Russell Wilson trade, I think there's a lot of pressure on Nathaniel Hackett to be.
Oh yeah, you are. No, yeah. That was win now, right? Like if you kept Drew Lock there,
yep, mm-hmm.
you get that what you call it. You get that leeway of
especially when you have a brand new owner coming in, like a guy who's has a lot of money and expects to win right away. You can't have a season like that one they just had in Denver and expect to keep your job.
With a guy like Russell Wilson at the helm.
Yeah. So talking about the free agency, I think you just got to try to find guys that wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. The draft with the limited draft capital, you really have to hit on every single pick. I think you need offensive line help in the worst way. I think everything else is secondary.
Yeah. Yeah,
You could use more. You could use an edge rusher since you traded away Bradley Chubb, and you don't really have anybody who's really proven at the edge rushing position. Jonathan Harris is not really that guy.
and I think that's because that's the wait. They didn't get a first for that Bradley. They didn't get
Yeah,
it
they
for
did. That's the one. That's the pick they traded for Sean Payton.
Oh yeah, they in bad business. They are in bad.
Yeah, so I'm not
business.
sure. Yeah, so I'm not sure what they're going to do. Let's talk top three priorities. The number one priority is kind of the one they already kind of accomplished. Is get the right head coach. I think they've done that with bringing in Sean Payton. All directions point to this being a good hire. Number two priority for me is getting Russell Wilson right, because it just he just wasn't himself last season at all. And it started from the first game all the way up into the last game. There were spurts here and there where Russell Wilson looked like the guy that you remember, but for game to game, he was just not that guy.
Yeah, the clock management, the clock management issue, like we saw in the first game, where they're trying to go for the game when the field goal, and they just let that clock run down and run down. And Peyton Manning on the Manning cast is like he's signaling time, like he called like 12 timeouts, before the Broncos even called their one timeout to stop the clock, and he's like the clock's just rolling down, and Peyton Manning is like he's like literally losing it. He's timeout. Like he's just like he's making the timeout signal. He's just going nuts on the Manning cast on Monday night. And you didn't even what was that, a 60-some yard field goal that you could even what's his name? The kicker wasn't even close to make it.
Yeah, it wasn't even close. Like I know that Brandon Menace is a very big leg, but that kick was in Seattle.
Right.
It wasn't in Denver. Like
Denver, different story, but it's like, bro, what was that? What was that? Like that was terrible. Like you had Brett, they had play clock issues. They had red zone issues. You said it. If this offense averages 19 points a game, they win 10 games.
Yeah. 19 games. 19 points is all they needed. They win 10 games. They have a winning record.
Like that's sad. Like all you needed to do was score basically because your defense was holding people to basically 15 a game when they did play it. Like when they were on when they was on the up and up. So yeah, hire the right head coach. I understand Sean Payton is a made man, but let's see if we still gotta say wait. Let's see if they did make the right decision because of the struggles that Russell Wilson had. So I think that's the first priority. Fix Russell Wilson. You cannot give up all the capital that you gave up
and pay him $250,000
for him to struggle. Can you imagine if he has another season like he just had?
Well, fun fact, actually, if he has another season like he does this season, the Denver Broncos could actually cut him and basically they'd be okay. Obviously the draft capital will still be gone, and it's still unfortunate, but they can legitimately get out of his money next offseason if they want to.
I understand it, right? Like your new owners into this beast that is the NFL, right? You don't know anything. You're a novice, you're a baby, you're new, and you trade for this guy in Russell Wilson, who, all is what he's done by name, right? He's beloved guy in Seattle. Led them to a Super Bowl. Well, was on a Super Bowl winning team. I can say he led them because that defense was that defense,
especially in that first Super Bowl. But yeah, if he wins that second Super Bowl, he for sure gets credit for a lot of that. Pete Carroll
and what's crazy is this is just real quick. Everybody wants to crack on Seattle for throwing the ball in that situation. What's the new norm? What's the
Throwing the
norm
ball.
now? Throwing the
Throwing the
football
ball.
in the red zone.
Yeah.
In that
I,
situation,
in a lot of faces, maybe they were ahead of the curve.
like throwing, like again, like that's I legit don't think that was a bad play call. That was just a
No,
better
it
play
wasn't.
by Malcolm. That was just a better play by Malcolm Butler.
100%.
But if it like so like if you're Seattle again, you got Russ, Javante Williams is coming back, Jerry Judy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick is coming back. That
Yep.
five right there, offensively, that five right there.
Albert O come play your tight end position or Greg Dulcich. Yeah, I think when it comes back to my third priority, this offensive line has to play better. It has to be at least somewhat sort of. Lloyd Kirstenberry is going to come back off IR. Not that he was remarkable, like all that good when he
Mhm.
was playing for them, but this is an offensive line that needs to be fixed because they just have two. This is not a good offensive line. It has struggles against the run. It struggles against pass protection. They need
Mhm.
to address that first before they do anything else because Russell Wilson can never be Russell Wilson if he's getting killed all the time.
Well, like, and that's kind of what I think that's kind of what led into his struggles, right? Like earlier in his career, we were so used to him using his escapability and his legs to extend plays, and that's where the whole "let Russ cook" mantra came from because he's rolling out of the pocket when protection breaks down, he's extending plays and he's finding guys wide open down the field. Because let's not act like those Seattle receivers were, you know,
No, no, they weren't. I
like
mean,
like like,
at the
like
time,
go
I mean,
at the
Doug
time,
Baldwin. Doug Baldwin was his best receiver.
like
No,
Dub,
no,
right?
no disrespect to Doug Baldwin, but
He
he's
ain't going to
probably
Canton. He
no,
ain't.
he's
Yeah,
for sure not.
he ain't going to Canton. Like
I mean,
what
Javon
Golden?
Curse was another one of his tight end, wide receivers. Javon Curse was a really nice, made plays when he needed him to, but he was never anything special. He went to then he go
Golden.
to New York, like
Yeah, Golden Tate was solid. Right, Golden Tate was solid. Like that. Golden Tate never got more than solid. Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So like Russ was like his
Jermaine Curse, not
Jermaine Curse.
Javon.
Like his play style allowed a lot of those guys to flourish because they're just like, all right, play's gonna break down. We know Russ is gonna keep this thing open, so we're just gonna move around till one of us gets open and he finds us. Right? Like it's the offensive line, like he's not trying to do that anymore. Like he's not trying to, and I think that's like maybe that's what hurt him. Like, bro, like no, use your mobility while you still can.
Yeah,
Like you're not a statue. Like stop. Like I understand. Like you don't want to use that. Like Pat Mahomes don't want to use his legs, but he just don't stand back there and get killed. Like if he has to go, he has to go. Right? And I think like in this division, they are like they obviously outside the obvious, like they took a step back, but you look at the Chiefs high powered offense, the Chargers high powered offense, hell, even the Raiders had some high powered offensive moments when all those guys were healthy.
yeah. I mean, they had the leading rusher in the NFL last season, and I think they had the leading receiver too, right? No, they
Uh
didn't. Devontae
no,
Adams was in the top five, but he wasn't in the leading
right,
receiver.
he won the league. But like so in a division with three high powered offenses, your strength was your defense. And no, when no, because all they have to like all those teams in your division, all they have to do is stop your offense once, maybe twice, and their offense scores once or twice. Game over. You're done.
Yep.
You're done.
So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with the Denver Broncos as they move through their offseason. We'll preview them, talk about them a little bit more as their draft comes up, as free agency starts to open up. But that's been our offseason preview for the Denver Broncos. Thank you very much for checking us out. This has been Prime Sports World. Please like, share, and subscribe. Go ahead, TJ.
And Cam Thomas is on his James Harden stuff. Remember when James Harden got traded to Houston and he dropped like 45 in his first game?
Yeah.
And then he followed it up with like a 50-point game or something like that. Yeah, Cam Thomas just dropped 47.
But yeah, Prime Sports will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is our Super Bowl preview show. We're also going to preview the Los Angeles Rams offseason, who are kind of in the similar boat as this particular Denver Broncos team, without a lot of draft capital to try to fix them. What is a roster that has a lot of holes? So we can talk about all that stuff tomorrow.
Well, they
Wednesday,
got
our big NBA trade deadline show.
Well, unlike the Broncos, the Rams have at least one trade chip that we know of, and we know the room like we know the Jalen Ramsey rumors.
Yeah, so we'll
So,
see. We'll get into this stuff tomorrow. We'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll
Excuse
talk
me.
about the Rams. Keep an eye out for that content. I've showed the link to all of our streaming platforms. And TJ, what we do here at the Prime, my friend?
We bring the heat, and it was
Yes,
so nice.
sir.
It was so nice today, just to see the snow melt and
Man,
hear it melting.
It was nice, dude. I had a very good time driving to work. I had a very good time driving to the grocery store. I had a very good time driving home from work. It's been a good day. That's what you do as an adult. You go to work. You go to the grocery store. That's about it. Sometimes you go to the gym. But yeah, that's been Prime Sports World. You guys all have a good night. We'll see you all tomorrow for our big
See you, man.
show. Peace out, brother.